A lone shepherd stands amidst the vast wilderness of Mount Horeb. The sun blazes above, but what catches his eye is a miracle. A bush, engulfed in flames, yet not consumed. He steps closer, curiosity mixing with awe. Suddenly a voice calls out, shaking the ground beneath him, "Moses! Moses!" This defining moment was only the beginning of a life that would change the course of history forever. Prophet Moses, the man chosen by God to liberate an entire nation, is one of the greatest figures in biblical history. Our story begins in Egypt, a land where Hebrew families groaned under the brutal oppression of Pharaoh's rule. Fearful of the rising Hebrew population, Pharaoh commanded that all newborn Hebrew boys be drowned in the Nile River. But God had other plans for one child. Born to Amram and Jochebed, Moses was hidden by his mother for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she placed him in a basket coated with pitch and set him adrift on the very waters meant to destroy him. By divine intervention, Pharaoh's daughter discovered the baby and adopted him as her own, unknowingly raising the deliverer of Israel right within the palace walls. Despite growing up as Egyptian royalty, Moses never forgot his Hebrew roots. One day, witnessing the brutal beating of a Hebrew slave, Moses' anger flared. He struck down the Egyptian and fled into exile, escaping Pharaoh's wrath. In the land of Midian, Moses lived as a shepherd for 40 years. But God was not finished with him yet. On that fateful day at Mount Horeb, God revealed his plan. Moses was to return to Egypt and demand the release of God's people from Pharaoh. Voice of God, I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. Go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out. Though hesitant and fearful, Moses accepted the divine mission. Armed with faith and a staff imbued with God's power, he returned to Egypt. Moses confronted Pharaoh with a bold declaration, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened. God unleashed 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt, each more severe than the last, culminating in the death of the firstborn. Finally, Pharaoh relented, and Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. But freedom was short-lived, as Pharaoh's army pursued them to the edge of the Red Sea. Trapped between the sea and the advancing soldiers, the people cried out in fear, but Moses stood firm, raising his staff. The waters parted, forming walls on either side. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, and as Pharaoh's army followed, the waters crashed down, drowning them all. This miraculous escape marked the dawn of a new chapter for God's chosen people. In the wilderness, Moses ascended Mount Sinai to commune with God. There he received the 10 Commandments, laws that would shape the moral foundation of generations to come. Moses also delivered prophecies about the Promised Land and foretold the coming of a prophet like himself who would lead God's people in a future age. Though Moses himself was not permitted to enter the Promised Land, his leadership and obedience to God established a covenant between God and Israel that remains central to biblical history. Moses, the prophet who spoke face-to-face with God, left an indelible mark on history. His life is a testament to the power of faith, obedience, and the divine calling to serve. From a baby in a basket to the great deliverer of a nation, Moses reminds us that God's purpose can transform anyone, no matter their circumstance. From a baby in a basket to the great deliverer of a nation, Moses reminds us that God's purpose can transform anyone, no matter their circumstance.